how can I be the best me? How can
Hmm.
I be the best me today? Tomorrow, some days it's not going to be as the best me from yesterday, but I'm just going to look at a new day, a new start, a new focus.
Thank you so much for joining us today on PivotMe.
Great to be here. I'm excited.
Well, we were just talking offline about a couple of things that we'll definitely want to bring to the podcast. We're going to get to that here in a second. But, we just read through your bio and the things that you have done, which you've done quite a bit in a variety of different industries. It's really impressive. But when I was thinking about your story, we love a good origin story, right? I was thinking about where you started in the ice business and then how you've made this big leap into what you're doing now. First, tell the listeners about where you started your entrepreneur journey. Like, how did this all begin for you?
Yeah, every time I share this, I still can't believe where I started. So I'm originally from Iowa, a small town called Garnavillo, Iowa, 700 people in the town. My
Mhm.
dad was always an entrepreneur. So I grew up in ice business. We're a wholesale distributor. We delivered packaged ice to convenience stores, bars, restaurants. And so my dad started the business in '86. I was born in
Mhm.
'89. And I say, as soon as I literally walk in, I was helping my dad in the ice business.
Yeah.
I did that all through high school, got to college, did it, helped put me through college. And I ended up buying the business for my father, and I ended up selling as well. And so that whole journey in the ice business is what got my work ethic, salesmanship, customer service, all that, where it really pivoted for me in terms of how I got into film production and investing and all that was when I was 21 years old, 2021. I had this invention called Arctic Stick to cool and flavor drinks. And it was to cool like a bottled beverage like this. You could
Mm.
you could cool it, but also you could flavor it with different liquids you put inside. I took that product to the market because I wanted to make more money in the ice business. Well, in the process, I launched it, patent, trademark, all that. I learned that there was a need for people to, for one, raise money. We did a
Mm.
crowdfunding campaign. Two, understood people didn't understand how to communicate or market their business. And so that's where I transitioned into it. Started with crowdfunding consulting, which led to the
Mhm.
company Accelerate Media Group, where we started helping people raise money, launch products, and growing companies. And then eventually the key component to raising the money was the video that we created. And so
Mhm.
I loved the video creation process and I loved being in front of the camera. So we ended up crowdfunding and launching TV shows and different film projects. And that kind of led to where I'm at today. But it started selling ice for a living. I was a driver. I drove to convenience stores. I think of a trucker delivering ice and big change to where I'm at today.
Yeah, that is a significant change. I've just got to ask, and we're going to talk about all the my pen just fell apart. We're going to talk about all the steps in between there. But when I think about you sort of being raised in this entrepreneurial household, were you always an entrepreneur, or do you feel like that was kind of like the path was laid out for you?
I was always I mean, I was always trying to compete against other people. I
Mm.
won the Boy Scouts popcorn most sales. I won the St. Jude's Bike-a-thon every year. I always went and sold, knock on doors, and I loved it. And it was ingrained
Mm.
in me from my father. And then like some people, they say they eventually become it. I swear, as soon as I came out of my mother's womb, I was selling.
You're going to sell someone. I'm selling that doctor.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I love that. I find that that is often the case with entrepreneurs. It's like, no, like they tend to be forced or heavily encouraged into corporate careers or school, not necessarily entrepreneurism. Like you're born with it and it shows up early. But I'm imagining this, you're working with your father in the ice business. You're doing this kind of work, you buy it and then sell it. Was that a hard transition? Like, was that hard on
It was
you, hard on him?
it was very emotional. It was actually one of the pivotal points in my life where I knew I had to make a change. Because think about it, from when I was born up until 28 years old, I was in the ice business, and even
Hmm.
though the last like 7 years of the ice business, I was building a brand, had a production company, and other things, and it was kind of running on its own. But it was this okay, a family business been around for 30 some years. And I always said I would never sell it. And I was in business with my father. But it was like this kind of almost like a divorce, forcing the different ways because my dad and I wouldn't be in business anymore. I'm selling the business. It's part of my identity. It was so hard. And I remember sitting next to him and said, Dad, I think it's best for me to sell because my heart wasn't there anymore. And we both cried, and he was at peace with it. But it did work, and I'm so grateful now, because now looking back on it, I make way more money. I'm very successful in what I do. That's a part of my life. I actually got to sell to my best friends, which worked out well. So I had that experience, I think, for a reason, because there's a lot of people I work with who are transferring. They just sell a major company and they're in this transition, or they're leaving a relationship, or they're leaving a job. And I get what it's like to leave that identity. You got to hey, this is it. That's part of my life. It's over now. I'm going to a new place.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you specifically talked on identity, because that's something that comes up a lot. And people that are listening, they have an identity wrapped around the previous role they had. Family business, man, that identity is entrenched in you. And I'm so glad that you touched on it, because oftentimes people think it's gaining a new skill set. That's the most challenging part. Is not. It's taking on the new identity. It's letting go of the last one. And let's be honest, a lot of times the people around us don't want us to. And that really can happen in family businesses. It sounds like you largely had the support of your father, but sometimes that doesn't happen. People are like, what do you mean? You're not continuing this on. This was supposed to be our legacy business. And I'm so glad that you touched on the identity, because there's someone right now who's listening who's going, but I've always been an accountant. I've always been whatever. I've always been in the corporate world. I've always been a director. And the idea of pursuing a business that they want, or different business than they're in, it's just so staggering to wrap your head around it. Man, identity is tough, but it really is kind of a outfit we put on and we can take back off again.
You also, here's what you got to think about is you got to do what's best for you, because you don't want to wake up one day and be much older and realize the only reason I stayed in is because I was doing it to cater to family or anybody else. Life is short, and that leap, for a few years it was a difficult transition and stuff, but now I'm a new human. I told my wife a couple days ago, I can't believe I was actually in the ice business. I was for so long. I just live such a different life now that I'm so grateful that I transitioned.
So glad you did. So glad you did. So when you make this transition out of the ice business, you're kind of shedding this old identity in the family business and you're leaning into other businesses. You said you had a production business already at that time. How did you make this transition? I mean, at first, we don't realize all our skills usually are transferable. So you had sales skills, you had communication skills, you no doubt had negotiation skills. I think you said you were a wholesaler, so you had distribution skills. But a lot of times we don't know that those things transfer into other fields. What did that transfer look like for you?
So for me, it was a little bit easier transition, because for me, I had a couple other successful businesses that surpassed what I was doing in revenue for the ice business. So that helped, but it also helped that I started to build a personal brand. Because I knew one day, if I didn't have a brand online, it was going to be the end of me. Because I saw where everything was going online, social media. I mean, I started doing ads back 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, when my first ad where I spent $1,000 and I could reach 1 million people, there's no doing that today.
The heyday. Yeah.
And so I would say, go back to your specialized knowledge. What is your knowledge? Who are your connections? And then what I would say to make a good transition is whatever you want to become, whatever industry you want to get into, find the person out there that's already achieved at a high level, and then hire them and find a way to get into business with them. That's what I always did. And it helped me get to the top quicker, but also with the right people that were going to make sure I didn't make mistakes.
Absolutely. It takes a level of humility that we're not always good at, right? It's hard to say, I don't know about this next part. Did you ever struggle with that? Admitting you didn't know, or needing help from someone else? Or is this nope, I'm just going to do what I need to do. I'm going to ask for help from whoever I need to ask from help for.
Well, I always took action. So I was not afraid to fail. So I would take massive action and learn as I went. But I always made sure to surround myself with my dream team, my call advisory board, that I would go to and say, what do you think? And sometimes my wife was that. So, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have different experts or friends. And I would just say, hey, what do you think I should do here? And then I would take that advice, and then based on my own current situation, I would say, okay, I'll take some of this, and this is what I'm going to do. So I had a better calculated kind of path moving forward. So
For sure.
make sure you go back to what is your knowledge, who are your connections, get some outside advice. It's not always going to be the right advice you need, but some will. And then you just got to move forward. Like at the end of the day, action is going to be the only thing that's actually going to get you more progress and more lessons learned.
Yep. Even if it's sloppy action, even imperfect action, it beats no action all day. And that was one thing that was evident in your story, is that you're someone who just takes massive action quickly, and then you can
Every day.
You can adjust on the back end. Like, oh well, we moved that way, we need to move this other way. We'll do that now. So I heard this story about you interviewing people around the country, driving around in your pickup truck. Like, talk to us about what this is and what that looked like on a day-to-day basis, because you made a sacrifice most people are not willing to do for a number of reasons. So walk us through that period in your life.
Yeah, it was a fun time, and I would still do it today. I started building an online brand and awareness so long ago, and back 2014, 15, I was traveling the country, and I remember I wanted to go attend these events. I wanted to interview people for my podcast show, and I wanted to do in person because I could build connections. And I didn't want money to be an issue, like the reason why I didn't do something. Sure. So I would travel to the people, set up my podcast, set up in their office. I had a Zoom H6, I had blue mics set up, headphones, everything. And I would interview them, and I would sleep in my truck at night, and I was eating $5 footlongs and canned food. And then I would do it because then I could do it on a budget. I once did a trip to LA from Des Moines, Iowa to LA and around the country, 9-day trip for less than like $800. Yeah. Slept in my truck every night. And I even, for like 5 days, slept in the parking lot of the LA Fitness Center off Vine Street in Hollywood because I negotiated a free gym membership. I could work out in the morning, shower there, go to my stuff during the day, and I edited the podcast show in my truck. And so that just kind of shows you, like, there is no excuse. I've never made excuses. When I had no money, I did it. Now that I have money, I still do it at a higher level. But you gotta just do. And those people didn't know I was sleeping in my truck. They didn't know I was driving just to see them. But I was doing what it took. And some of those relationships I built early on became key business relationships that I have today.
That's amazing. Brandon, I'm trying to think of what you have to tell yourself. So I love this story. I love like the scrappy starter story too. And again, we're going to talk about your successes and success habits. And we're also going to touch on self-sabotage and why you think people do it so often. But I'm imagining this version of you that, rolled up, you showered at the gym, you ate your footlong sandwich. Like, what do you have to say to yourself to walk in an interview, somebody who's worth $100 million and not get up in your head, not battle with imposter syndrome, or maybe you did battle, but what are you saying to yourself that allows you to show up in the right space, the right energy, bring the confidence that you get to interview people like that?
I always knew it wasn't going to be my current situation. Like this situation wasn't always going to be my future. And I knew where I was going, and I was very confident where I was going. And so I spoke as if it was my reality. And one thing I did do, I know a lot of people say this, but it is true if you do it effectively, is I would speak into the mirror every single day. I still speak to myself sometimes when I'm running or in front of the mirror. And I say I am the most powerful person. I say my reality as if it's there. And confidence is key. And yes, it can be when you're no money in the bank, you're broke, nothing's going right, and you got to go speak in front of a group or pitch. It can be kind of a mind fuck because it's like, hey, I'm this person. But I always told myself, this is it. I have to deal with my little anger and negative mindset in that moment because that's what it took to get to the next level. And so you got to be talking to yourself all the time. And another thing that I did to deal with it is I'm a huge advocate of exercising, working out, because that helped me deal with, I call the demons in my head that were like imposter, negativity. Because after I worked out early in the morning, I felt so much more powerful and abundant that I didn't have as much negative thought about, oh, this is where I'm currently at. I know where I'm going.
It's such a simple fix, but exercise is so tightly correlated with confidence. And it's not about necessarily the strength you're building. Yes, that's a plus. Not necessarily about body shape and crap like that. It's really about just feeling powerful. And then that carries you out through the rest of your day. You get more energy, but there's something so raw about feeling powerful. So really what we're saying is the free gym membership that you negotiated years ago was instrumental to your success. That's what we're hearing.
A free membership. I mean, go to tag on that too is this is why exercise is powerful, your mindset, but this is also why you need to be around positive people.
For sure.
I shut out all negativity, and I make sure I surround myself with people that are doing things at such a high level that I'm like, dude, I need to be at this level, which forces me to go to that next level.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things we talk about at PivotMe a lot is the design peer group. So I talk about this idea of most of us are living with our default peer group. That's people that we grew up with, people we went to school with, people we live next to, maybe, we grew up together as kids. And we will try to ride and die with our default peer group. And you really have to design the peer group, and you've got to design the peer group around where you're going, 3 years out, 10 years out. How did you go through that process? So was it going around the country and interviewing these people and saying, I'm going to bring these people into my design peer group? And what did you do with all the rest of the people in your life who didn't fit into this new vision of you?
Yeah. So where this even came about, because not everybody, like, I forget sometimes how people live in such a different world and mindset is a long time ago. I was 20 years old. I read a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in that book, there's a principle in there called the Mastermind Principle. And the things that really impacted me were the stories in it by like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Andrew Carnegie. And one thing they had in common is they weren't necessarily maybe the smartest people, but they had their own people around them, their mastermind group, that helped coordinate them towards where they wanted to go. And so that book opened my mind to what's possible. And then I started seeking out my own mastermind group. And that's when I got some of my first mentors and business partners. So that mindset is what made me realize, okay, I need to have these people around me, and this is what I need to do. Now, as I progressed, and another book to follow up to that called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill was a book, especially for people that start making a lot of money and let's say fame and all that, is it talks about some of the things that come at you as you start to get up here, and sometimes you start believing your own bullshit. And that's where I realized, okay, I need to watch who I hang out with as I get more of this. Because think about it. You're going out to dinner. You got a lot of money. You got a lot of wealthy people around you. They're all drinking crazy. Maybe they want to go to the strip club. Maybe they want to snort some cocaine. Maybe they want to do something. It's easy for somebody to get in that trap because everybody's like, oh, you're this great guy. Well, that trap is what takes a lot of people down on the way towards their massive success. And so be very conscious of that along the way, and constantly be asking yourself, am I living up to my best version of me? And these people around me, do they serve me anymore? If not, maybe it's time to transition out to those circles and go to your next level of circles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that definitely can hold people back because they can think the people that I'm surrounding myself with, it's okay. I've known this guy for 20 years and he's all right. But anyone that you're in a room with is influencing you, and conversely, you're influencing them too. Think a lot of people get caught in minimizing how much those people are influencing us. So we've talked a lot about that at PivotMe. But what I'd love to hear about is sort of a pivot point for you, whether that's a low moment, whether it's selling a business, maybe it's running out of money. Any entrepreneur has many stories like that, but if you could share a couple of moments that you had.
Okay, I'll share two, and there's reasons for them. One, which opened my mind about how you can make wealth, is through a connection, a relationship, sat down for a meeting. They wanted me to bring a few people to the table and help recruit some people to be a part of a board. And they were close relationships I built over years and invested money with. And I ended up bringing that together. And what a hour meeting and a few intros and calls led to a deal that made me well over $1 million, made me realize that, yes, work hard, but if you have the right people around you that have huge value to give, and you have unique talent, and you could orchestrate it together in a unique way to bring more value, you can get a big piece of that value.
Mm-hmm.
That's what opened me up to consulting for equity, doing brand deals, everything else. So that's one side to open up. But the day that really changed my life was a low moment. And I've had many of them, but this one always sticks out to me. So ended up traveling the country, did a TV show called Success in Your City. We won some Emmys, and we sold everything, got married. Like in a matter of 12 months, I did more than what people do in like 50 years. And so what people didn't realize is I was hit me at lunch, and as soon as that success happened, I lost everything. They took my land. The bank took my land. I had to sell it. I lost everything I owned. We had to sell everything. I was selling things off the walls. And the breaking point for me is when I was back and my wife was at her job and she went to turn the vehicle on, and the vehicle, it's wintertime. I was in Minnesota at the time. The vehicle didn't turn on, and she called me, and well, they repossessed our vehicle. And at that moment, I was 4 hours away. I was at my family's house. I was rock. I had 20 debt collectors call me a day. I was so broke, negative $500,000. And the love of my life had to get an Uber and Uber home because we just lost the last thing really that we had. And I remember running down to the bedroom that was at my parents' house and screaming and bawling and saying to myself, just so mad, this will never happen to me again. Never. And that rock bottom moment put so much fuel and fire into me that within 24 months, I built everything back. I built relationships, wealth. And honestly, I'm very grateful for it because if it didn't happen, it might have turned me into maybe not a very grateful person, but also when you know what rock bottom is, you know how far you can go and you know your potential. And I will tell you, I go into any business meeting, any deal, I have had scars that I know, hey, I've been through. This doesn't mean I can take on anything. And so that was my pivotal moment that I said, okay, I got to kick into gear. And it completely changed everything. Money, relationships, my success. It was a game changer.
And this was after your show? This is after the Emmys?
This was after. This was 2000. It wasn't that long ago. It was in December of 2019. We're in 2023. I went like completely almost bankrupt to now where I'm at. I've built a big portfolio and I'm doing the things I love. I'm around some amazing people. I did it in a matter of a couple of years. And now 4 years later, like at that time, it felt like that was so far away. But if you get your mind right, if you surround yourself with the right people, and if you are disciplined enough to put a system in place that you will follow, you will quickly get out of that hole. But you have to really get your mind right. I mean, I was listening to Think and Go Rich and all that every day. I was going to the gym. I was screaming at myself in the mirror. I was doing what I had to do to make sure I'd get one piece of the puzzle. What's the next piece? What's the next piece? And eventually it was getting easier.
So back then, so the version of you, so I heard in there were some lessons, as is always the case. Like after the fall, we're like, wow, wouldn't give nothing for my journey now. It sucked, but all these things I rebuilt and I rebuilt them stronger, or I'm a better person. So I heard some pluses that came out of that. But what were you failing to see back then caused this downswing?
I have a very obsession with things sometimes. And my obsession, and it could be a blessing, it could be a sin, it could be, I don't know what you call it, but my obsession was creating a lot of content, creating shows. When I go all in, I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Sometimes it goes at any sacrifice. And where that kind of domino effect came is I just got done doing a TV show. I had put a lot of my own money in. I was putting everything into my brand, and I was over leveraging myself. And I was robbing Peter to pay Paul to make the next thing happen. And then before I know, I was on this very shifty floor that it was just one brick away from falling down. And that's what happened. And I realized that, for one, no deals are done until the money's in the bank. Two, you got to mitigate a little bit your obsession. Like I was completely obsessed. I was willing to ever ruin my I almost got divorced like right out of the gate because I was so obsessed with this. I would do whatever it took. And so that's what I learned. I don't know if I learned it does take obsession. People say to me, they say what they want to do. And I see them, and most of them are very unlikely to get where they say they're going because I know they're not committed. And I don't begrudge them because I know what I had to do and put my wife and family through to get through it. And I look back and sometimes I'm like ashamed of the things they had to go through, put my life into depression, put my family in hardship and getting people to show up at their house. Like, that's not cool. But I was committed to where I was going.
Mm-hmm. Brendan, do you think it's binary? Do you think it's one or the other? That you either have to be obsessed to the point of massive personal sacrifice and maybe family sacrifice, like you were saying, my wife and my family, or like, well, you're going to get subpar results. Like, do you think there's a space between those two places?
I think this. I mean, you look at Elon Musk. I mean, I think in an interview, his wife even said, like, hey, you got a guy that's doing this and this. How do you expect anything different? And she was actually kind of cordial, I think, in the interview about it. You look at any successful person, what is the price you're willing to pay? You're going to have to go all in. Like, people that say there's balance, like if you want something really big, again, there's negotiations with yourself. Like,
sure.
Hey, what am I willing to sacrifice? Sure. What am I not willing to do? What does success mean to you? For me, I question this all the time because I know where I'm going, but I also know, like, I do want to see my family here and there. How can I find the win-win? And because there's some people very wealthy, very successful, but nobody will talk to them. Their kids and family hate them. So they don't have a love of their life. They live and everybody wants something from them. So I guess to throw back is anybody listening, ask yourself, what does success mean to you? I will say, if you want to be the best in anything, you're going to have to sacrifice so much and go all in, and be crazy. Like, you're going to have to be obsessed, as if you don't achieve it, you're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because when, so a few days ago, I interviewed David Meltzer, and he,
Great guy.
if you're familiar with his sort of trajectory, worth $100 million, lost it all in his late 20s. Right. And, I asked him, I said, if you could go back to David right before the fall, what would you say to him? And you've got to say it in a way that will make sense to him. Not this, like, find your passion or balance at it. Like, that's not going to make sense to that version of David. What would you need to say to that version of David? And he thought about it and he said, I would tell him to ask for help. I would tell him that he doesn't need to know all the answers, that he needs to ask for help over and over again. He's got to put his ego aside. And I thought, man, that is so. Now, mind you, he's also giving advice to someone in his 20s. So that's might be a little bit different than advice you give to someone in their 30s or 40s. But I thought that is so good because he was talking about a world where he'd given up a lot of things for his success, but he was playing with the wrong crowd and it came back and bit him. And I thought that was such a good reminder of both ask for help. And it really goes back to what you're talking about earlier, is be in the right circles because they can shortcut your path to success. But definitely define what success is for you. Some people aren't willing to pay the price that you're talking about. People might admire Elon Musk, but not everybody wants to trade places with him, and there are people who are the Elon Musks in the world, and there's a lot of other people. There is space in between. You just got to define what that looks like for you.
So there's our society lives like, hey, you got to do this to be a success. I don't agree. Like, that's what I'm saying to you. You figure out what your success is. And if that's working a 40-hour week and going travel, all that, that's fine. That's your success. Who am I to judge? My success is a totally different version, and don't push onto anybody what it should be. Only you know.
Sure.
I mean, David Meltzer, we're involved. So we're both in the movie Think Rich Legacy. I remember David, the year that I almost went bankrupt, I was speaking on the Think and Grow Rich tour with him. So I had made money. I'd been successful, but I was going through a dark time. His story of what he went through, I was going through, and I like, it helped me in so many ways.
Oh yeah.
And I spoke to him afterwards. I mean, the house he gave to his mother had to be taken away from him. And so that's why I think it's important for all of us to share our story, because stories like that, in that situation, David's story helped me in a way to overcome what I was going through.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I'm glad that you brought that up. So by the way, I'm actually going down. Are you in LA? Are you in Southern California too?
Hey, I'm not. I'm between Florida and Nashville, and then I'm in a camper in Minnesota right now. So
Okay,
depending where
so
I'm at.
a little bit. I'm in Nashville quite a bit, so maybe we'll connect there. So I'm going
Yeah.
down to Southern California with David to do some of the show that he's working on down there right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're doing that. I think it's actually this month, coming up soon. But I wanna touch on what you just said about showing the real side of what this looks like, because and then that needs to lead into the video that we were just discussing of showing up on video and sharing your story. When we look at what is shown to us through both social media and websites and all, it's all the highlight reel, right? And now everybody's talking about, oh, it's the highlight reel. And the problem is everybody's seeing everybody else's highlight reel while we're all living our own messy backstory. And it can really screw with your head. Like in scaling something, if you're on social media, it can really undermine the success you're trying to have because you think everybody else has got it figured out, which they don't. And I definitely see this movement to be more candid with the struggle. Like, talk to us about you sharing the struggle and not just going, look at my other house and look at my jet and all. Like, those things are amazing and aspirational, but unfortunately the rest of us are like, everybody's living their backstory, even those people, and we've all seen those. Like, I've been on stage with people that are talking about the aspirational goals, and then they get off and they're like, yeah, I actually had a conversation with my wife in 3 months, we're not even talking right now, or I'm struggling. And that's real life. Like, that's real life. So is that something that you're working hard to do, is showing kind of the other side of like, hey, here's the struggle that comes along with these pursuits, or this is what my messy backstory looks like too?
Yeah, I think it's important to show like the non-sexy stuff instead of some
Mm-hmm.
people just show the jets and the cars and what's going right. And some of those people deal with like massive like imposter themselves, or even
Totally.
they deal with depression. And
Mm-hmm.
so because they feel like they need to have another like view, whatever that is, followers. For me, like for one, when I was going through the shit, I wasn't sharing, hey, I'm going through the
Yeah.
like repossession right now. Uh,
Sure.
but after
Sure.
time went by, I was comfortable sharing it because I went through
Mm-hmm.
it. Now, nothing wrong to say, like, I will share while I'm going through what I do. So, like, I share videos where I just got done working out, exercise. I share videos as I'm doing a shoot or at an event. I share some of the obstacles we had to overcome for a certain situation. It's like my own reality TV show, and I think everybody on social media should look at it that way. It's you're the host and producer of your own reality TV show, and what is it you want your viewers to watch, and what do you want them to remember you by? Which, from a
Mm-hmm.
business standpoint, that is really the starting point of how you communicate your message, your brand. So there's you as a person, who you are, what you believe in, what you stand for, and then there's you and what you do and how you add value to the world and how people
Mm-hmm.
can actually hire you. When you
Yeah.
share both of those combined, you start building your own personal brand, which allows you to get more people to buy from you for your products or services, but also you get more people to like you and trust you
Mm-hmm.
because you have commonalities. I might share
Yes.
a video of me exercising. There's other people that enjoy exercising or running. I might share
Yeah.
videos of me with my family, and I have my niece and nephew. Other people can relate to that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sharing my backstory of a young or a small town, people from a small town. And so
Yeah.
these are psychological connection points with your audience. And then, oh,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, they know you're an expert in this space. So
Sure.
that's what it comes back to. And the imposter, a lot of people I work with are like, oh, I don't I don't want to get on camera. I don't want to talk about. Well, I just shared what talk about who you are, what you do, how you help people. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
other thing is they worry about what other people think of them. I was talking to somebody earlier. They're worried about their friends and family around them. I said,
Mm-hmm.
here's the deal.
Yeah.
Are they going to pay your bills? Or are they going to
Yep.
like, they can unfollow you. That's fine. They're never going to buy from you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go towards what you are trying to achieve. And we live in a world of social media. If you want to make more money and achieve this goal in business or whatever you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
social media is a
Gotta show up.
huge component to doing it. And
Yep.
so you choose your poison. Which one do you want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's the thing, like, you cannot stop creating content for the person who's not going to be reached by your content. Like, that, it just doesn't make sense. Like, one of the ways, and I want to talk about how people get over that. One of the ways that I've talked to business owners is I'm just thinking of a conversation I just had yesterday, which is a gal that I work with. She speaks to women at a certain age group that are sort of transitioning out of corporate America. And I said, I want you to imagine the woman who's sitting down at her laptop at 11 o'clock tonight, and she's exhausted. She's burnt out. She knows she wants to do something else, but she's not sure how to
So
make
good.
that transition. And she's sitting in front of her computer and she's got her fingers there right over the Google. I was like, she needs the solution. She's Googling for solutions inside your head right now. And because you didn't show up, because you didn't have the courage to show up, because you're afraid of what your aunt is going to say in Wisconsin, you didn't put your content out there. And now she doesn't get a solution. I think when you frame it for the right people, for contribution focused people, and a lot of people that listen to PivotMe are contribution focused, like they want to serve, they want to put good stuff out there, but you can have the cure for cancer in your garage, but if nobody knows about it, it doesn't do anybody any good. And social media is a tool for that. It's showing up and talking about what you do and talking about who you are. People have to know, like, and trust you. They're more likely to buy from you if you do that. But if you don't show up and if you don't have the courage to show up, you can't serve anybody, or the amount of people that you're serving is much less than what it could be. And I know that is a struggle for a lot of people. So, Brandon, when you're working with someone that struggles with showing up on video, whether it's because I don't want my aunt in Wisconsin to see me, whether it's because the people from school are going to see me, people are going to think, oh, I'm trying to be an influencer, or they just don't like how they show up on video, or they think it's arrogant. Like, talk us through that process and what you say to those people.
So first off, what you just said is one of the things I would say to them is like you perfectly said, there's somebody out there right now that could use your help. And I take it one further. I say, hey, there are other people out there that are marketing better than you, but they have a shit product.
Totally.
And that person on the computer is going to hire them, and their life is not going to be better off because you were lazy and you couldn't get over your own self about creating that content. And so when you look at it that way, and another further is like, your video could save somebody's life. It could, think about if you can help them grow a business, help them make more money, think about how that can help their family. And so when you start thinking that next level, then it's no longer about you. It's about the success and growth of your business, your team, your family. And so that's when you show up. And so thinking about it that way. And the other thing too is like those negative comments and trolls, when you start getting them, that means you're doing something. That means, oh, this is a good video. This is getting some traction.
Haters are coming. I did something right.
Haters are coming. And one more thing, hurt people hurt people. So
yes, they do.
The people that say negative things on social media are actually deflecting how they feel about themselves. And when you know that, you don't take it to heart anymore because they're just hurt people that need help. And so it's not personal.
It's not. It's not. And it's funny. We were talking right before we went on the air, and I was saying that one of my clients was asking me, he said, was it hard for you to start showing up on video? Because I worked in corporate America for years, and showing up on video doing a podcast was definitely not in the cards at that time. And I told him, I said, I don't actually watch my videos. And he said, well, what? And I was joking around saying, for all I know, I might have this weird thing that I do on video. But I said, because the video is not for me. It's not for me. Person it's for, it's going to reach them. And because I showed up, because I hit record, like, it's going to do what it needs to do, but the video isn't for me. So I don't want to know. If I met with a PR expert 2 weeks ago, and we were having this conversation. This is a personal conversation, but she's like, we should do this with your hair. And she starts to lean in and tells me where I should have Botox. And she goes, right here. And she goes to tap my forehead, woman. But I said, I hear what you're saying. Take it into consideration. I'm like, but it's not for that. That's not who it's for. That's not the audience it's for. The people that I need to reach, they're going to be reached regardless of whether the haircut is a certain way. And yes, PR is an important thing. I want to be clear if she's listening right now. I see you, Laura. It's an important thing. I get that. But if you don't press record, if you don't show up, you can't serve those people. A friend of mine, Rory Vaden, who's also in Nashville, always says when the mission to serve is clear, there can be no fear. And so when you're clear that you're there to show up for someone, then you don't have to be fearful because you're not doing it for those people. The people that you're doing it for will be reached just because you hit the record button.
It's so true. Press record, share your story, share your value, and you're going to help more people. And it's also going to help you in return.
Huge, huge. So when you decided to do this personal brand, I'm curious, like, what made you realize that you needed a personal brand? We've talked about it. We've talked about it on the podcast as well, because as I mentioned, I came from corporate America. And then when I was very familiar with the corporate brand, but when I came into the podcasting space and YouTube and all the things, I was like, a personal brand, why is that necessary? Like, it's about KPIs and objectives and deliverables. And no, it was about personal brand. Yes, they wanted to know that I weightlifted. Yes, they wanted to know that I had kids. Like, and that was a big shift for me. Like, how did you make that shift? What made you decide to build a personal brand? Talk to us about that.
So it wasn't me setting out to build a personal brand at the beginning. This is, I think, 2012, 13 is when I started like building a brand. But for me, it was marketing. I knew if I could reach more eyeballs and keep communicating a message, it would convert to a result. And so I've transitioned my own personal brand and other brands over the years, where it was at one point, I'm this guy as an inventor. Then I'm a crowdfunding expert. And then I became a media expert and investor. And so I knew if I could keep building more like and trust with more people and reach more people, then it resulted in more money and more other things. So I started up doing the podcast show, did that for years and still have a podcast show. So that was building a brand. But again, marketing. Then I started going on TV around the country, because I knew if I had video clips of me on TV, I must be somebody because I'm on TV. And then, okay, if you're an author, you know what you're talking about. So I wrote books. And then one thing after another. Then the ultimate for me is when I created my own TV show, and I realized, okay, I'm a host of a show. I have distribution. This is like the ultimate glory of it all. And then I'm hosting events. And so I took all these things that were marketing for me, but it was also building more like and trust. And then, okay, that just happened to be a topic. Everybody says, oh, it's building a brand. Well, I was doing it for a decade. I was just marketing. And so now that I understand it all, it's even more strategic. Like, hey, influential relationships, brand building. How can I be in business with very big influencers, certain industries that can help me associate and tap into their audience, which helps bring my brand up? Like, there's higher levels of impact that you can do very strategically versus I still do a lot of like touch points and all that. But how can you do it at the highest level that really brings your brand to the next level?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And just being aware of that, like you don't graduate from this work. So none of it, whether it's you elevating, whether it's your personal development, whether it's growing your business, like there's no award that you get. Oh, well, you achieved the highest level. There's always a level above that. And if you're listening to the show, you want that next level. Brandon, talk to me about Rise and Record. What do you guys do? What made you decide to do this? Walk me through that.
Yeah, so Rise and Record is like it sounds. You rise up and share your story through content. You record content. It came from a couple of things. One, my wife and I in 2018 traveled the country and created a docuseries called Success in Your City, where we were on this mission to find the true meaning of success. Won some Emmys, got the show out there, launched on Prime back in 19. And so we learned a lot from that process. And we learned what success was, what it wasn't for certain people, but also we saw the power of these people sharing their story on camera and how that actually impacted their life personally, but also professionally. And so then we said, okay, let's create an event around this. And we created Rise and Record. We're going on the 3rd annual event. We do masterminds, shoots, and annual events around the country. And it's all about sharing your story through video. And it's also, my wife and I created together, Samantha Rosine, we believe in the power of your story. And we talk about, hey, we almost lost everything. Car repossessed. We went through hell, but we're here sharing our story. And now here's where we are. There's power in your story. And so that's what it's about. Listeners, go to riserecord.com. Would love for you to attend. We got it in Nashville this year, October 17th through the 19th. And if you're looking to share your story, if you're looking to build your influence online, it's for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. So is it someone who is dying to share their story, or is it someone that's in a different industry, but they're just considering how sharing their story might elevate their sales, connect with their clients? Like, who is that for?
It could be sharing the story of you personally or the story of your business, because storytelling is what sells. So it's understanding how to share your story, the importance, but also how to strategically do that from a business standpoint. Digital marketing, commercial campaigns, films, projects like that. How do you actually turn that into money?
Sure. I love it. We're going to put the link in the show notes. I want to shift for a second. I want us to talk about our favorite topic, self-sabotage. So let me start out a little easy. Why do you think so many people sabotage their success? How are people getting in their own way out there?
Man, it's a really good question. I mean, I still have, I wake up in the morning some mornings and I question if I'm doing the right thing, or I feel like a piece of shit, or like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not living up to my full potential. And that's probably more
Mm-hmm.
childhood things, but
It
um,
usually is. It almost
and
always comes
that's
back to our
and
childhood.
and and that's why I exercise, work out, and be in this positive kind of atmosphere. I think we're born going to negative. Like, we live in a world where we're forced towards negative. So we're self-sabotaging, we're questioning ourselves, we're questioning our success. So it's normal. You just got to learn
Mhm.
to acknowledge it and realize,
Sure.
okay, this is just there, but I'm not going to feed into it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to think towards where you want to go. I just think we live in a world, if you turn the TV, you turn the news on, or if you got the wrong friends, they're going to build this negative kind of feeling in your mind. It might help you be more self-sabotaging.
For sure.
Um, so just be very conscious of where you are and be confident on where you're going, and know that you're a badass and you can go there.
So how I love this. And in general, turning on the TV is not going to help your sabotaging
Not at
techniques.
all.
Like they're going to go the other direction, especially the news. Um, how do you self-sabotage? What's your particular flavor? Because we all do it, right? Is it procrastination? Is it I just avoid what needs to get done? I take on too many projects. I overcommit.
You know, it's rare that I do it. I do have, and maybe it's called the negative thoughts. I mean, I deal with
Mm-hmm.
it, and that's kind of, I think, a big reason why I'm successful, is because it forces me to be even more action taking to fight the demons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think sometimes, because I'm around so many high level people, I question like my own, because I'm at a high level, but like I see where I can compare myself. It's
Sure.
it's hard not to do, because like I'm like, holy shit, I should be there. And I realize,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm 33, I still got time. um,
Mm-hmm.
but I have this feeling of I should be a lot further than where I am, and that's what happens
Relatable.
to me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I just acknowledge it, and just not compare myself, and look, okay, how can I be the best me? How can
Mm-hmm.
I be the best me today? Tomorrow, some days it's not going to be as the best me from yesterday, but I'm just going to look at a new day, a new start, a new focus.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned the fighting the demons twice, and that exercise
Yes.
helps. Do you know
Yep.
where they come from?
They come from wanting to be seen. They come from never feeling like I'm enough. They come from uh, past traumatic, I guess, experiences. They come from, I think we're all, I mean, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have the demons. And when I say
Sure.
demons, I mean the negative. I mean, you could go into your spiritual side of things and the
Yeah.
heaven and earth and all that. But like, I talk about like the negative things that are put into our head that
Mm-hmm.
come from social media, TV, or negative subconscious things that are around us. And then
Mm-hmm.
also the thoughts that we have in our head. And one of the most powerful things a mentor told me years ago, and I didn't get it right away. He said, you become what you think about most of the time. I'll say it again. You become what you think about most of the time. Now, our thoughts, be very conscious of what you're thinking, because some people think about, I can't do this. I
Mm-hmm.
want to, like, they think about sex all the time, drugs, and their high,
Mm-hmm.
their next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not going to help you get to where you want to go. So I force myself to be thinking about the things that will propel me forward. You
Yeah.
actually have to have this like control over your thoughts, because
Sure.
your thoughts determine what you do. And
Mm-hmm.
so that, and again, goes back to, that's why I go to the gym. That's why I surround myself with the right people. That's why I stay in a positive mindset, so I can
Totally.
attack those demons and stay in a positive state, because a positive state gives me positive results.
Yeah. I think of the demons, I think of them as like a whack-a-mole game. You know that game? Like
Yeah.
it pops up and you
Yeah.
hit it with the hammer, and then that son bitch pops up somewhere else and you have to hit it again. Like they don't always go away. And that's when we talk about self-sabotage. I'm like, just so you know, like nobody ever totally graduates from self-sabotage. We all do it. The key is to know how you do it, and not just how you do it, but the catalyst for it. Like, what's the step right before I start self-sabotaging? So we were talking earlier in the PivotMe Academy that I was talking about that one of my particular flavors of self-sabotage is when I'm about to level up. Doesn't matter what level I'm at, but when I'm about to level up, sometimes I'll I'll slide back down, and I'm being totally vulnerable here. It's because I got two daughters. And sometimes I go, oh shit, is this going to make me a less present parent? Because for the stage I'm in my life, being a present parent, present, joyful mom is super important to me. And I run a consulting business, and I run an academy, and I run a podcast, and I do all these things, and I have all these international clients, and it's amazing. I love what I do. But if I'm not careful, I'll back down from the national stage, like the national global stage. If I'm not careful, I'll back away from it, and I'll start sabotaging the opportunity because of really, it's just a limiting belief. I'm not going to be a less present parent. And so understanding that, and that I take on too many projects, which most of us entrepreneurs do, right? Like, because
I think every entrepreneur does. Yeah,
totally. We all know our best idea, our best business idea or project idea, because it was the one we just had. We're like, this is the one. And it's always we make the air of recency. But if you understand how you self-sabotage, and then the step right before that, that's when you can put a different plan in place. And so instead of you just living out your practice thoughts over and over again. So I'm so glad that you talked about controlling your thoughts. We are not our thoughts. We talk about this a lot here. We are not our thoughts. We're just a series of practice thoughts, and we can change them. It's just a habit that we're in, and we can change it. And I love that you have a method in which you do control them. I do have a question though, kind of in the same vein, which is, you're a very confident person. Like, you come off really confident. What rattles you?
Rattles me in what way?
Well, I mean, what challenges your confidence? When's the moment where you're like, ooh, that got me for a second, and then you have to kind of recompose and begin again?
When I go back to my small town every once in a while.
God, that's a bitch, isn't it? Yeah, I hear that a lot. Why
goes
is
back
that?
to all the childhood. It's because you go back. It's a different mindset, different energy. Goes back to all the things where how I used to be before I became who I am, and so you just acknowledge them, and you handle. I could only handle so much time back home.
Yeah, that's so true. So I've heard that many times. Going back to my small town, going back to my family, I've heard that a lot too. That makes a lot of sense. Again, we just have to know it. First comes acknowledgement, second comes choice, right? All right, well, what am I going to do with this? So, okay, so actually, I want to make sure that we get this in. I have a couple follow-up questions, but we're going to put it in the show notes. But where is the best place to connect with you, whether it's around Rise and Record or just getting familiar with the work that you are doing? Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so if you want to attend to Rise and Record and check it out, go to riseandrecord.com. For me, I'm on social media everywhere at Brandon T. Adams, or just go to brandonTadams.com. It's easy to find me. Send me a direct message and I'll respond back.
Perfect. That's amazing. So a couple of last questions. If you could tell the world one thing, what would it be?
I would say that be very conscious of who you surround yourself with. And I'm about to tell you like three things and one thing. I would say read the book Think and Be Rich by Napoleon Hill, and live off those principles. And that will put you on the right path to wherever you want to go.
I just made a connection. So when you've talked a lot about surround yourself with the right people. I'm assuming the people from your small town weren't the right people.
No, I mean, I have friends, really good friends from my small town still, and they're successful. I just need to be, for where I wanted to go, I need to be around the heaviest hitters in the world. And I always traveled to where they were, and I found a way to get into business for them.
Well done. Well done. All right. I appreciate the time that you spent talking to us, and I appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty. You've done some amazing things. And it's always nice when people can kind of say, hey, here was the part that you maybe didn't see on social media. Here's the part that you maybe don't see a photograph on my website. It makes you not just for aspirational goals, but guys, we've got to tell those stories. All of us, we've got to tell that story, because someone who's listening right now is where you were. Someone is, whether that's their car's being repossessed, they're struggling, there's not enough money in the bank, they don't know if they're going to be able to make payroll for their business next month. Someone is in that place right now, and they're just stacking evidence as to why it's all going to fall apart, why they took too big of a swing and they should have never gone into this business. They're stacking evidence for the negative, and you just gave them a whole lot of reasons to stack it in the other direction. And ultimately, you said that period of time, the one that you shared with us, your pivot point, ended up launching you into some of your biggest successes right afterwards. What do you say, 24 months and you put it all back together? That's
24
amazing.
months.
Well done. Thank you so much for your time. And we're excited to see what you do next. I hope you got some amazing information from our interview today, and I've set up the next video for you. So I'll see you over there at the next video.